You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com.
Greetings, Earthlings. You're listening to the Pro Wrestling Mothership Network.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the Mothership of Fame. And this week, tonight, we are joined here, the Zigman and myself, by one and the only Ugly. Ugly, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing very well. I'm glad to be on. How are you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic, man.
Good.
You know, it's getting ready for Hall of Fame. It's I call it one of my favorite months of the year because the build up to it is great for us. It's a lot of fun. The weekend itself is even better, and it seems that this year it's just gotten even bigger than it was last year.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been looking at the Facebook posts and keeping, up to date with everything, and just not just the caliber of the names of the guys that are coming in, but the quantity, I mean, it seems like we've got more huge stars than we ever did. I'd rattle them off, but I'd probably only get about halfway through and be scratching my head going, God, who else is coming? Who else is coming? There's so many guys, so many big names. I mean, I think this feels like it's the biggest year, the biggest one we've ever done.
Absolutely. Like I said, just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And before we kind of get into Hall of Fame, I kind of wanted to talk to you briefly here about, you guys have a huge stretch of fair shows coming up starting, Monday, I believe?
We do. This Saturday, we're in Algona for our, we have monthly shows in Algona, but then starting Monday, man, we're hitting those county fairs, and it's pretty much 2 straight weeks. The ending of it is the Hall of Fame show, and I believe we even have a fair show that night, so we kind of have to split up our regular roster. I'm pretty sure that night we have 2 shows. It's such a crazy schedule. I have it on my calendar. I'm like, I know I need to be on this day, and I know I need to be on this day. But some of those shows some of those fairs, they want us to do multiple shows a day, so it gets pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely grueling for you guys that go from maybe doing 1 or 2 shows a month to all of a sudden, hey, you're going to be wrestling 3 times in one day, and you get rolling into these August month and July month. It gets very hot and humid out there, and that's not necessarily the easiest kind of weather to wrestle in either.
Yeah, that is actually a really big factor. It does seem, July is usually the hottest month or one of the hottest months, but it does seem when we're wrestling outside, it just seems like that dial got turned up a little bit. It's a little bit extra hot. It's a little bit extra sunny. It's a little bit extra humid. And, we go out there in a hot ring. That ring apron gets scorching. I want to stay on my feet, but that's not how wrestling matches work. Sometimes you're getting slammed and sometimes you're getting pinned down. And that mat is hot.
I bet it is out there in that hot sun. It's got to be a scorcher this time of the year. And speaking of the fair shows, as you said, it all does get kicked off. Well, you have the special 2 p.m. bell time on July 14th in Algona, and then July 16th is Knoxville, and then the July 17th Hall of Fame Classic qualifier in Des Moines, followed by Southeast Iowa show, Winterset, Iowa on the 19th, Sibley on the 20th, Winterset on the 21st, 22nd, and then Eastern Iowa on the 23rd. And then you said there was one on the 27th. There's a Mankato on the 24th, 25th, and 26th of July. Lamar's on the 27th, as well as the Hall of Fame show and Hall of Fame Classic. So that's going to be a busy couple weeks for you guys, definitely, over Spring of Fair show. So if you're out in any of those areas, definitely go to Impact Pro Wrestling's Facebook page. Just search out Impact Pro Wrestling. The schedule is pinned to the top of the IPW page. It gives you where they're going to be at. And check all the event invites and see who's going to be there and what times and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Like you said, Zach, it's going to be a busy month for Impact Pro Wrestling here at Ugly. Before we kind of get rolling into the rest of it, I know you're getting ready to kind of wind down your wrestling career. Take us back to where it all began for you, for those who aren't familiar with your story, kind of how you became a wrestling fan, what made you want to get into this crazy lifestyle?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for starters, I think every guy kind of has that same beginning. We all watched it when we were kids. We all loved it. We all fell in love with it. But it was one of those things where you start to get a little bit older and I mean, like, in your early 20s or whatever, and you discover drinking and going to the bars and doing all this other stuff. And I think a lot of guys get pulled away from wrestling like, oh, it's kind of a kids thing. I watched it when I was a kid, so it's for kids. And it really isn't. But, I think that seems to be the direction a lot of guys go when they get in their late teens, early 20s. But I don't drink. I never wanted to go to bars. My friends would go do that. And I still remained a wrestling fan. I would watch pay-per-views. I'd watch Monday Night Raw, and I'd watch Monday Nitro, all that. And I would see these guys on TV, and they were all phenomenal, and they were all big, and they were all muscular. And, I was 20, 21, 22, and I would just think, well, I would never do it because I'm not that big of a guy. So I went to my first indie show. I was probably about 25. And I never wanted to go to indie wrestling shows because to me, I'm like, that's the minor leagues. Like, if I can watch the guys on TV perform at such a high level, I don't want to see crap, is what my opinion was. And I went to an indie show when I was 25, and I was blown away because the guys, like, everybody was phenomenal. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a whole universe I've been missing out on, And the funny thing was, I'm watching these guys come to the curtain and perform and all this, and I'm like, I'm not the biggest guy, but I was bigger than like half of the dudes I saw. So that kind of got me thinking, maybe I can do this. I don't have to be huge, and and I don't have to make it to WWE. This just looks cool. So I spent the next few years just not doing it. Trying to figure out what kind of school to go to and how much it costs and things of that nature. And finally I was getting closer to 30. And I was like, okay, I absolutely have to try doing this. If I don't do it and I turn 40 and I turn 50 and I turn 60 and I look back and I say, God, what would it have been like if I did it? And I just knew I'd be kicking myself. So I started training with Impact Pro Wrestling with Travis Shillington, or TS Aggressor by his ring name, a week after I turned 30. And it was a blast. Obviously, it's 10 years later now, giving away my age, I guess, which is one of the reasons why I'm slowing down. But no, it was great. I loved training. I got it. Some of the guys that had been around a couple of years, like James Jeffries and Justin Decent and Marshall Scott, Supacito Kid. I don't know if you guys remember him.
Oh, yep,
it's been
absolutely.
A while since he wrestled. Yeah. So a lot of these guys who had been already on the roster for a couple of years, I got Big Pitcher, can't forget him, kept coming to training too, and helping out and I just thought it was great because I would go to IPW shows while I was training, like now we encourage the trainees to do, hey, if we got a show, go to it. But I would just see these, Maddie Starr and AJ Smooth and James, and I'm like, these guys are so great. I'm like, I hope I get good enough to be on a handful of shows and, maybe wrestle these guys. But I was just, as a trainee, blown away by them. And, got through training, started to be on shows. Maybe took a little while to get the confidence. But yeah, I mean, early on I got to tag with Justin Decent. We were a tag team for about 3 years, and that was a blast because Justin's a really goofy guy and super entertaining and loud and, just in the ring, he's so charismatic. I think tagging with him kind of brought me up a few notches. And then before I knew it, I was having matches with AJ Smooth and Jim Jeffries and Maddie Starr and all these guys. And I'm like, okay, I made it. As far as indie wrestling goes, I made it. I got to wrestle these guys and feel what put on what I feel were decent matches, with them. Like, okay, now I can hold my own against these guys. And like, that was pretty cool. Being toe to toe with these IPW guys that I was looking up to going through training.
Absolutely. I remember the first time I saw you and Justin as a tag team, and you guys looked like you were having so much fun out there, and I really enjoyed your team. And I want to talk a little bit about that here in a minute, but I want to let's bring it into your last year here in Des Moines. I want to talk to you a little bit about your feud with Malice. And, maybe the Des Moines fans weren't too kind. They didn't like you, per se, or you didn't like them. But that was an amazing feud, from the cage match to all the hardcore wars you guys had. And then you guys were in a team against the Hooligans. I mean, it's been an awesome year as a fan to watch you guys in the war, and then you guys as a team at the Forte Center in Des Moines.
No, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. Yeah, Malice and I was just beating the hell out of each other. It's so fun. I like Malice. I mean, he's a lot of his training, was done under me, and he's a really cool guy outside of the ring. And we started having these matches, and it kind of escalated into Falls Count Anywhere and dog collars and a cage match and all this stuff. And so much of that is a rarity. Those types of matches, to get to do any type of stipulation match is fun, but to get to do as much as I did with Malice, and just the dynamic of him being 400 pounds, he's a legit 400 pounds. There's no, you don't teach that. You can't fake that. I mean, he's 400 pounds. So not only having all these stipulations of Falls Count Anywhere in a cage match, and it's what do I do against a man who's 400 pounds? I'm not throwing him into the cage. We had Falls Count Anywhere. He, right outside Forte in Des Moines, he threw me over some shrubbery, some bushes. He just launched me over them, landed on the other side on the sidewalk, which did not feel good. But, my offense is pretty limited with, what do you do with a 400-pound man? But, God, we beat the hell out of each other, and it was definitely a lot of fun. And, when that accumulated to the 3 matches we had at our final show opposite each other, we had an I Quit match and a tables match, and I don't even remember the third stipulation. I must still be concussed. But yeah, and the short turning point just a few months ago was when Aaron Von Baron and Justin Decent, attacked him, and I had enough of their crap, so I suggested Malice and I team up and take them on, and then eventually led to a match with the Hooligans. And yeah, it was kind of fun. I think if I wasn't pulling the plug at this point, him and I would probably tag team a little bit longer, but there's some signs that I need to slow down. But yeah, that last match in Des Moines against the Hooligans, that was a blast. So those guys were super cool. They had great ideas, and the match was so fun, back and forth, and just based off of crowd reaction, I think we pulled it off pretty good. And what was kind of funny was I knew that was going to be my last Des Moines match, coming into this busy July fair season. And Troy, the promoter, said, "Hey, if you want to mention before the match that it's going to be your last match," he goes, "Well, before or after?" I'm like, "I'm going to say it after, because I don't want to bum out the fans who love me, and I appreciate it. I don't want to bum them out. Hey, this is my last match, and I'll watch the Hooligans and Ugly and Malice beat the shit out of each other." So I kind of made the announcement afterwards. I thanked the Hooligans, and I thanked Malice, and I thanked Troy and a bunch of the guys, and T.S. Aggressor and all that. But I told the crowd that was going to be my last time in Des Moines, and we went right into intermission. So I stayed out there, and a lot of fans came up and said some very nice things to me. It was very nice, and some of the kids had tears, and I'm like, man, I guess I really meant a lot to these people. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Anytime I had made a post about this earlier today, it's like anytime that, you've ever seen us at a show, you always make sure to go out of your way and chat with us for a few minutes, which we greatly appreciate. And, I feel like it's becoming, I hope it's not becoming, but, last year, Tony Sly retiring, this year, you're kind of retiring. It's, I don't know, it feels like it's kind of becoming starting to become a bit of a tradition here as we head into the Hall of Fame. Some of these guys who have been around for quite a while in the Iowa independent scene are kind of starting to take that step back out of wrestling.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily my plan to just be done at the Hall of Fame show. I kind of had to give myself an end date. And I know, like, even going into August, there's a few shows at fairs. And I'm like, okay, I just got to say the end of July, I have to put a cap on it, because if I don't, then I'll be like, well, I'll do the next Algona show, and I'll do the next, and then it'll just never end. So just to make it official, I told Troy, I'm like, I think after July, I'm done doing shows. I'll still do training, but I think I got to be done with shows. And he goes, okay, let's make it the Hall of Fame show. He goes, who do you want to wrestle? I'm like, whoa, geez. All right, I guess it'll be the Hall of Fame show. And, he kind of threw that out, and I'm not going to argue with that. I think it's super cool. But to your point, though, I don't think it'll be a trend. I hope not, for the Hall of Fame show, because there's so much that goes on. And I actually haven't wrestled at the Hall of Fame show for a couple of years. So part of me is just crossing my fingers that there's a lot of regular fans coming back that still remember me and will actually care that it's my last match. So I'll find out on the day, I'm sure.
Well, and you've actually done quite a bit of the behind the scenes the last couple of years as far as the Hall of Fame goes. I mean, it's not like you haven't been there. You've just been basically helping out, from a behind the scenes aspect.
Yeah, I've been helping out a little bit. I can't remember if it was I think last year I actually just stayed home since I have a little toddler running around. I thought last year I would take the opportunity to just have that weekend at home. But the year before, we actually did have a show in, can't remember the town name, and I know somebody's going to listen to this and just say, oh yeah, he was at this town. I just can't remember.
Wasn't it Webster City?
But thank you. Now anybody listening can't give me shit about it, because you remembered. You saved me. But yeah, it was Webster City. Yep. So we had to kind of split up our crew, and a bunch of us were at Webster City, and that was fun because, it wasn't the Hall of Fame show, but the crowd there was great. They were into it and they were loud. And I can't speak for every wrestler, but that's like all I need. I don't care where I am. If the crowd is into it, that makes it just awesome.
Absolutely. It's one of the biggest shows, to attend to. And, like we said, there's so much going on. From your perspective, I guess, what are some, tips that you would have for fans that are coming to the weekend for the first time that, they don't know what to expect? Like, what would be some of your advice to some of those people that are coming to the show for the first time that they don't know what to expect from the weekend?
Yeah. I guess my only advice is do everything. They have stuff going on, at the museum during the day. We do the talent evaluation in the afternoon, with, trying to think of who it is this year. Gerald Briscoe and
JJ Dillon.
JJ Dillon. Yep, that's right. They're doing a talent evaluation, so it's kind of like another show that'll be in the afternoon on Friday before our big show at night. And that's basically a chance for guys to get in front of actual WWE scouts. And they will send guys down to Florida if they like them. So for fans, that's kind of cool to see that type of atmosphere where wrestlers are given a very, very specific set amount of time and to go out there and perform and try to impress these guys. You know, that's pretty cool. So for the fans' expectation, they should do that. They should do everything at the museum. There's so much stuff going on. It's pretty cool. And what's neat is the convention center, the 5 Sullivan Brothers Convention Center is just a couple blocks from the museum. So they're just so close. It's, you know, it's so easy to get from one to the other. And bottom line, just do everything you can. Everything is so cool. Go to the museum and check it out.
They've added so many cool things this year, like the the digital scavenger hunt that's going to go on all weekend long. The Royal Rumble pinball competition tournament they're going to have are all weekend long. Plus the WWE 2K17 video game,
Yes.
Xbox challenge as well. So those were added to the weekend. So those are huge tournaments and things to do along the whole weekend, along with going to the podcast and the tryout, the Hall of Fame Classic, the regular IPW show, as well as, you know, checking out the museum. There's a lot of cool history in the museum, so you definitely want to do that. And it's just an amazing weekend.
Absolutely. Do everything. Do all of that. Everything you just said, do it all.
Now let's get moving on to the actual show aspect of it. You know, there, like you said, there's basically, you know, you more or less say there's, I guess, technically 3 shows going on Friday if you want to count the talent evaluation, and then you also have the first round of the Hall of Fame Classic tournament, which let's start running down some of the matches here for you. You're gonna have Kurt Stallion versus Brian Cage, Errol versus BJZ, Austin Aries versus the IPW representative, who will be determined at the July 17th show in Des Moines, and then Colt Cabana versus Hardcore Holly. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Ugly. Who do you think will be the IPW representative that goes on to face Austin Aries?
Oh, my God. You're putting me in a position to have a bunch of dudes mad at me if I don't say their name. Man.
Well, I'll put it to you like this. Me and Zach did this on the show last week. We gave our predictions, and Zach went with the Juicebox hero Tyler Jones, and I picked the Real J Double James Jeffries to be the IPW representative.
God, you know, those are both great because he's James Jeffries. I mean, do you need to say anything else? He's James Jeffries. But then Tyler Jones, definitely up and coming. He's been at it for a couple of years now, and he's tall, you know, big, muscular dude. Definitely coming into his own. But I might have to say Justin. I got to say Justin Decent because we were a tag team for so long. He's a big guy. I'm going to have to go with Justin as my pick.
And I do want to add, whoever loses in the Aries versus the IPW representative is going to go on later in the night to tag up with Harry Smith in the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team title match, which has the Stud Club versus Malice and Wes Briscoe versus you know, Harry Smith and the loser of the Aries IPW match, and then one more team to be determined. So realistically, that's not a bad way to go if you're the loser of that match to get to team with Harry Smith.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not a bad consolation prize. I mean, you still got a chance at the tag titles. That's pretty great.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, let's move into the main event card of the evening. We're going to have the semifinals and the finals of the Hall of Fame Classic. Obviously, your match against Aaron Von Baron. The one that I'll be honest for you, man, was really excited to see announced, and also really shocked because we haven't seen one of these in Impact Pro Wrestling for a while, is a TLC match for the IPW Women's title. Miss Frankie J versus Sierra Avery versus Brooke Valentine versus whoever else, because it's an invitational matchup.
Yeah, that is going to be insane. These girls have been killing each other for the last few years, and I mean, in cages and fans bring the weapons and all these types of matches, and this one I can't wait for. I think they're just going to kill each other, and it's going to be great. I mean, I can't imagine what they're going to do in front of that Waterloo crowd. That I'm just excited to see what's going to wow me in that match, because these chicks hate each other, and it's going to be fun to just watch them just kill each other in a TLC match.
And that's what they've been doing all. I mean, and go back to the very first match that really put the women's wrestling and IPW on the map. They got a lot of internet buzz. Was that Marshalltown 3-way at the hotel, if you remember, with Brooke and Sierra and Frankie, Miss Frankie J. That got a lot of traction online. A lot of people put that match over, and it's one of the best women's matches I've seen in person. And then we've seen them, as you said, in cage matches. We've seen them in different other stipulation matches, battling all over Des Moines, Algona, all over Iowa. And I can't wait to see what they're going to do with tables, ladders, and chairs, and to see who else is going to be involved in it, and how badass that match is going to be in Waterloo.
Yeah, that's going to be crazy.
Zach.
Yeah, the rest of the night, and one that I'm also really looking forward to that I was happy to see brought back this year, is the Legends Lumberjack match. You got Ryan Slade, Austin Fouts, and Sparrow versus the Big Picture, Justin Decent, and Nathan Edwards. Now, obviously that could change, providing if Justin Decent, or really any of these guys, go on to become the IPW representative and then happen to defeat Austin Aries in the first round. But the Lumberjack match, man, there's been some great memories from that match over the years.
Yeah, I've witnessed several of them, and they're pretty sweet. It's kind of fun to see some of the legends get involved, and the one thing that will always stand out is Baron Von Raschke giving Nikki Free the claw. And then, of course, Nikki Free whining and complaining that that's why he lost his match.
Was that the year that he wrestled TS?
I believe so.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. So I was thinking, yes. I was trying to remember. I mean, it's been a lot of years I've gone to, but I remember that one. That was a lot of fun. And that match is fantastic with all the legends, and then you get some of the IPW locker room at ringside and just the battle back and forth, and it's just been a lot of great moments. I can't wait to see that return. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, and then a couple of years ago, I think James J. Dillon took off his shoe and smoked AJ Smooth in the face with it. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And then the Luke Death Cup Battle Royal is also always fun. This year, Brian Blair has already thrown his name into the hat. Rory Fox, Jimmy Wild have also been announced. So that one, again, is always fun. If you guys still want your tickets, you can order your tickets now through the museum. Give the museum a call at 319-233-0745. Ringside seats that include the first 4 rows are $25. General admission are $15. So if you guys want your tickets, I highly recommend going and getting them early, because this show is always just jam-packed, and I'd say it's probably the biggest show you guys put on all year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is insane. Once in a while we'll bring in a pretty big name, but this is a lot of big names, a lot of big stars coming into this one event, so it's pretty sweet.
Absolutely. Now, we don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to say, for as long as we've been following the Iowa independent scene, from us as fans, thank you for, just always being entertaining, whether we were cheering you or whether we were booing you. Just thank you for always entertaining us, man. You've always been such a joy to watch and such a privilege to always be able to talk to. I mean, we talked to you a couple years ago at the Hall of Fame show on our Hall of Fame special show for Shotgun Wrestling Radio, and we can't thank you enough for the time that you've always been given to us.
Well, no, I mean, I want to say thank you, because that's very nice, positive feedback that helps feed my ego. But no, I appreciate it. I go into each show and each match thinking, I hope I can entertain. I hope people remember me in a positive light, not like, oh, the guy that sucks and he screws up all the time. But, I don't need to be the next Shawn Michaels. I just wanted to entertain, and it is kind of nice hearing that kind of feedback. I mean, when I started, I thought, man, if I suck, at least they'll remember the face paint and the ugly stick. at least I've got enough gimmicks going. But it's great to hear that kind of feedback. I've always tried to entertain and just give the fans something that hopefully they would remember. So no, thank you for saying that. And it's always a pleasure to see you guys at our shows. And I definitely like making my rounds and shaking hands and stuff like that. But it's kind of cool to see you guys there because you guys are such prophets of the industry, and you always seem to know so much more about wrestling than I do, and I've been doing it for 10 years. So
thank you.
So thank you for that feedback and the positive words. I appreciate it.
I do gotta say, Zach, before we let you go, Ugly, I want to ask you, and we've asked this in the past, as you're winding down here, getting towards the end of your wrestling career at Waterloo against Aaron Von Baron. Talk a little about your biggest moment to this date. What is your biggest moment that you've had? Is there a couple that stick out in your wrestling career here?
Yeah, there is. Some of them are not even in the ring. They're driving in the car. Most of what a lot of people don't realize what we do is we'll drive 5 hours in one direction to be in front of a crowd for 15 minutes. And what's kind of fun is some of those road trips. And one of the reasons why, when Troy said, "Who do you want to wrestle in your last match?" and I said, "Aaron Von Baron." I mean, I've stayed at his place. He stayed at my place. We've put on hundreds of miles together. We text almost every day. It's very bromantic, but I don't think I've quite had the connection with any other guy than I did with him. So many memories just involve driving down the road with some of these guys, sharing stories and telling jokes. But I think as far as at a show, and I know you guys have heard this story before, so I'm going to kind of keep it short and paraphrase it so that I don't start crying, because I will. When Justin and I were tagging, and it was one of our first Hall of Fame shows, and there was a mom that came up to us during intermission and said her boy is in a wheelchair, and she asked if we could come say hi to him. And she said, he's a little discolored, but he's not contagious or anything like that. He's just sick. So Justin and I went over and said hi, shook his hand. It was kind of fun. And then after intermission was our match. So we came out and high-fived the crowd, and we went over to him and gave him one of our T-shirts. Justin gave him a T-shirt, and I gave him one of my souvenir ugly sticks. And we had a match, and life goes on. Well, the next year we came back to the Hall of Fame show, and his parents were there. Okay, now I'm starting to lose it a little bit. They said he had just passed away a few weeks before the show, and they already had the tickets, so they felt that they should come. And he wanted to be buried with the T-shirt and the ugly stick that we gave him. Trying to keep it together. There's nothing that's going to top that. It's kind of like my last show in Des Moines when I said I was going to be done wrestling in Des Moines. I'm going to wrap up the wrestling career. And some of the fans came up to me in tears, and you don't realize what kind of impact this makes. No pun intended with Impact Pro Wrestling, but it does make an impact on people. And it does mean a lot to them. So that's kind of my big story that I always break down and I tell. So I try not to tell it too often, but it's pretty epic. It's pretty cool that Justin and I were able to make that big of an impact in this kid's life, because he only saw us that one time. He never saw us at any other show. He just saw us that one time, but it made a lasting impression with him.
That's awesome, man. I can't think of a better way to be remembered or end the show, I guess. I guess for as we do get ready to wrap up here, man, is there, for people that do want to still keep up to date with you and to kind of follow you, where can they find you at on the social media trends so people can still stay in touch with you? I'm sure you'll still be at the Impact Pro Wrestling shows. Obviously, you're still going to be a big part of the training down in Algona there, and so there's obviously ways that people can stay in touch. But what are some ways that some of your fans can follow you on social media?
Sure, I'm on Twitter as The Ugly Wrestler. And like you said, since I am still going to be involved with the training, I'll still be at a lot of our shows, mainly like Algona shows. We tend to do training in the afternoon before our shows at night. So I'll be there. I'll still be around. It's not like Ugly's gone forever. But social media, I'm going to be on Twitter at The Ugly Wrestler.
So definitely get out as he's wrapping up here. I want to say get out to all the upcoming fair show stretch here the next 2 weeks, starting in Knoxville on Monday, July 17th at 7 p.m. And definitely go to Impact Pro Wrestling on Facebook and Twitter at IPW Pro to get more information on those shows. As Ugly is wrapping it up here, guys, so it's going to be the last opportunity to see him live through the fair shows, and then his big match with Aaron Von Baron. As we wrap up, and I know you've touched a little bit on Aaron Von Baron, Ugly, but just talk about him real quick as an opponent as we wrap up here tonight.
I've wrestled him a handful of times. I think I've got his strategies down. I know all his big moves. He likes doing the crossface, and he does an RKO. And my strategy is not get caught in the crossface and not get caught in an RKO, because as everybody knows, that can be done out of nowhere.
Absolutely.
All right, my man. Well, we thank you for all the time that you've always given us here on the show, and we appreciate you giving us, hopefully not, but we never say never in the wrestling business. So thank you for giving us one last interview. Again, guys, get out to all the fair shows. Get out to the Hall of Fame weekend, the 26th, 27th, and 28th in Waterloo, Iowa. It's a great time, so hopefully you get out and you can see Ugly one more time. And guys, thank you again for joining us here on this very special edition of the Pro Wrestling Mothership Network Hall of Fame special with our special guest this week, Ugly. Ugly, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows, visit electronicmediacollective.com.